Next, we'll discuss the environmental scan, which is the way in which organizations look at the factors within and from without the organization that affect the services of that organization. So we're going to start with the technological, and what the technological elements or conditions are what is the current state of knowledge and capability that the organization has in a technological sense. So if we're working within the education system of care, we're going to look at the technology both in the sense of the technology that the students are using, the software and hardware, but also the technology that the school uses. So this is going to be the phone lines, the email service. This is going to be how they communicate with the parents in emergencies, all the different in transportation with the busing. So the technological capabilities of an organization can set it up for success or set it up for failure. And this is due to the changing circumstances from without. So as education begins to transition from a primarily hands-on physical state to a more digital and distance learning model, the technology that schools need and school districts will need is going to change. And it's going to be the structure of the organization and its ability to adapt to these changing this changing environment and this changing set of modality of learning that is going to determine a school that is going to succeed and help its students reach the knowledge transfer that they require, or a school falling short of that. This is also going to be the ability for the organization to process information. When we're discussing healthcare information, so with the technological side, we can look at the actual tools that they have. So are their MRI machines the newest generation? Do they have everything is up to date? The technology that they're using is going to help provide the highest level of care and quality of care to its patients. But also the information that's processing. So if a hospital starts to notice that certain patients on certain floors or in certain departments are becoming more susceptible to infections, being able to use the data that they're collecting on those patients to analyze it and to show patterns or anomalies are going to help an organization better react to situations that are occurring in the field and in real time. With education, this would allow the school district to track student attendance, to track the school grades, and if used properly and appropriately for the right reasons, this can help identify students that require additional support. And also within the social work community, when we're talking about case management, working with individuals and families, this can be the technology that the actual organization or the case manager or case worker uses when they're in the field. So are they using tablets to keep digital copies of everything where they can email the client at that time? Are they using paper files that have to be then inputted into the case management or database, that system that they're using? So the technological environment for an organization is really the ability for the organization to provide the highest level of care, the highest quality care, by using technology efficiently and staying up to date with that technology. Next, we have the legal environment. And this can relate to laws that are passed. So if we are dealing with the juvenile justice system, if a law changes regarding the criminality of certain acts or the ability for, we can say, juveniles to be put into solitary confinement, This is going to change the way that the organization is able to act into the way it provides services. Regulations that require medical professionals to take certain steps. So when HIPAA was first brought in, all service providers had to now meet the new regulations that these laws brought into enactment that required them to ensure that the privacy of each of their patients was protected, and also that the patients also had access to their records. The legal environment can also deal with court decisions. So a lot of times a court decision can overturn an earlier court decision, which can change the way that services are provided. Within the education field, this can be whether or not students can be actually arrested for truancy. This can be whether or not a student can be expelled from the school. This can be used in policing and what police are able to and are not able to do. In the medical field, this can be with the emergency rooms, that emergency rooms are required to take patients, anyone that comes off the street, and to treat them, and they can't be turned away. So these court decisions in the legal environment can have drastic consequences and drastically affect the way an organization is able to conduct its services. This can also lead to the characteristics of an institution. So especially with the public organization, as laws change and laws can be passed by the legislatures and or executive orders can be given out by the executive branch, this can change the way that the organization is, what their actual responsibilities are, and to assign the duties that they can and cannot perform. Next, we look at moving on to that and sticking with that political aspect of the environment. When we're dealing with large-scale organizations, especially the large public organizations or large for-profit or nonprofit organizations that use a lot of government funding, they are going to be at they serve at the pleasure of whatever political party is in office. And what I mean by that they serve at the pleasure of is that they receive funding if they are an organization working in a field or providing a service that the political party in power supports. This is also if an organization is providing a service that a politician is campaigning on and campaigning on expanding, that this may change the funding stream. And just as that politician may be able to bring funding in, if the political dynamics and the power dynamics change and another political party is placed in power, then that funding can then go away. So the stability of the political system and just what the status quo is at that time really determines where the funding is going to go. So an example of this can be, we can look at immigration within the United States, where during the Obama administration, immigration, especially with refugees, the numbers of refugees being brought into the United States was very high. So resettlement programs across the country were receiving lots of federal funding to help these individuals settle and acclimate to the U.S. society and to the new culture. When the Trump administration came into power, they had some of the lowest numbers of refugees since the numbers started being tracked, and those resettlement agencies then lost that funding source. So because of the change in politics, those organizations were either able to respond to that changing political environment and to weather the 4 years of reduced funding, or a lot of organizations were actually forced to shutter their doors because of the lack of funding. So scanning the political environment, understanding where the political will is moving and where the momentum is moving can help an organization prepare for a loss in funding and look for other alternatives, or it allows the organization to determine what services are going to be provided and how those services will be provided. So the political environment is extremely important, especially if you're working for an organization or working within an organization that has political funding that's connected to the local, state, or federal level. Another element in the environment is the economic environment that's occurring. So when times are good, we have a very strong market. People are more likely to donate to charities. If you have extra money in your pocket, if organizations have extra money, then they may be more likely to give money to nonprofit organizations or be able to fund or sponsor different initiatives and research and things like that, studies to improve the interventions that are currently taking place. But this also changes with the difference of changes in interest rates, whether or not it's a good time to upgrade and put improvements on your building or determine if you're going to be moving to another site, and also employment levels. So if you have a labor market that has very low unemployment, then your ability to attract and hire new individuals it's going to be based on either the money that the compensation, the financial and the other benefits that they will receive, or is going to look at the structure or the culture of your organization. And if you're able to adapt, your organization is able to adapt to these changing economic environment, the changing unemployment rates, and the ability to still attract skilled workers, then that's going to help your organization successfully accomplish its mission. The demographics of an organization also affects its ability to adapt to changing environments. So we know that an organization that is diverse in age, gender, ethnicity, religion, education, social, and economic status, all of these, the different groups of individuals and the experience of these individuals and how they identify themselves is going to affect the way that they see the world, the way that they look at problems, but also their ability to scan the environment themselves. So if you have a very diverse organization, if you look at age, then you can use the experience and the knowledge that the older workers that have been working for several decades, and just everything they've seen, because they've witnessed the different changes in an environment over the years and have seen successful and unsuccessful adaptations to that. But then you can bring in the younger workers who may see the world as society in a way that society is starting to transition into. So they may be, if they're just coming out of their education, they may be exposed to new interventions and just the cutting edge research that's coming out, and they may have a different idea of how to address issues and situations in a way that is different from their older peers. But the balance between the two allow the strengths of each group to offset the weaknesses of the other. And this is going to be with any group. Any group is going to have potential blind spots that they're not going to be able to identify with, or they're not going to be thinking about because it's not a part of their everyday life, and it's not how their everyday experience. So they may not be able to see something coming that someone who is in another situation is able to, just based on those experiences. So by creating a diverse organization, that allows the organization to adapt to these changing environments, and just the changing situations that are occurring, especially now when you have this rapid transition from a in-person based economy to a remote economy. The computer and technology skills of younger generations is going to help kind of transition into using technology like Slack or Microsoft Teams that are able to use the conference style, recreate the conference style of communication via messaging. There's also the ecological environment. So when we're looking, this can be the physical environment, but this can also be the climate. So if we are working in an organization that responds to natural disasters, currently what that organization may have been responding to 30 years ago could be much different today. If we look at the wildfires that are happening out west, especially in California with their severe and lengthy drought, the organizations that are responding to disasters that may have once responded to earthquakes or other natural disasters are now responding to the survivors of these huge forest fires and those that have been impacted by these forest fires. And then you also have in the Gulf Coast with the more frequent and intense hurricanes that are occurring, with the flooding, and also with the hurricanes that are starting to work their way up the East Coast in the United States. So the actual climate change is affecting what an organization needs to do to stay relevant and to still perform to achieve the mission of that organization. The geography also is important. So if you are an organization that is working in an area that is farther away, more remote from, or this can also be the location, that's farther away in a more remote area, that organization is going to have to adapt to their ability to have to resupply, their ability to reach their clients, and the services that are needed are going to be very different based on an organization that would be located in an urban center. Going on with that, the urban center, you also have to look at population density. So you can have an organization that starts in an area that has primarily had a low population, and that organization adapts and is set up to serve a small population. If that population starts to grow quickly and that organization doesn't see the changes in trends that are occurring, then they may be unable to meet the new demands of their clients. So understanding the actual changes in population and that outside environment is going to be very important for the success of an organization. We can also look at the cultural elements or cultural conditions of the organization, which can be anything from the dominant values of an organization to attitudes to beliefs, but a lot of times it's the social norms of that organization. What actions are and are not allowed in that organization. And this can be formal, where there are actual rules and regulations around that, but it can also be these unwritten norms, these unwritten rules or these informal rules that dictate how one behaves within an organization. And to kind of highlight how this can change is if you look at the Me Too movement, where there had been rules and laws that had been put in place that were designed to protect women from sexual harassment and sexual assault of women and men. And what the Me Too movement proved was that the social norms of turning a blind eye to these acts by individuals in power had changed. And once the Me Too movement occurred, that it kind of brought that to light and brought attention to that and created this demand for change and for accountability and to really change the social norms from one of turning a blind eye to one of action, to not be a bystander, but to stand up and to speak out when you saw something happening that was illegal and immoral. And what these cultural norms have done is they've started the conversation, but they've changed the way that organizations are going to have to address and the culture in their organization. And finally, the final condition that we'll look at is the stakeholder. And the stakeholder can be the customer or the clients of the organization. It can be the competitors of the organization, anything to the suppliers, the regulators, the unions that they work with, or different associates. So really anyone that has a stake in that company. So if you are working with if you're working for an organization within a community and you're the only game in town, the only one providing the services that you're providing, it's going to change the way that you look at the environment and what is occurring, because you have less competition. So that means you have less motivation to innovate and to expand and continuously better yourself to provide better and better services, because the individuals in your area don't have another option. But this is also going to determine how these organizations are obtaining their supplies. So if you are working for an organization that is just starting, if we look at the costs over the last year in many materials has gone up due to the economic conditions. Well, those economic conditions have now affected the suppliers, and with these, so your stakeholders are now being affected indirectly. You're being affected indirectly from these ecological or these economic changes, and now the cost of your supplies are going up. And if your organization is not structured in a way that is going to be flexible enough to adapt to that, that can limit the ability for your organization to actually achieve its goals and best serve its clients. Now, how do we use this information? We can, in order to collect this information, we can use certain tools. So we have environmental scans. So that's actually going through each of those conditions that we just listed and actually analyzing each of those to see, okay, what in these different areas, these different conditions, what is changing, what is staying the same, where do we need to improve, where do we need to learn more on, and what is okay to stay. Needs assessments can be used to gain some of that information within the target population, or it can be just used in the population at large to determine if that target population is starting to shift to a different need. You can do stakeholder analysis to ask the stakeholders, and not just the clients or the customers, what their needs are and how, and ways that you can better and more efficiently work with those stakeholders. Strategic planning, which takes everything that we've just discussed and really focuses on what is the environment going to look like in 5 years or in 10 years, and how can we structure our organization in a way that it will be able to weather the ups and downs and the changes that in the environment that can occur. And there's also just a program evaluation where you can look at the actual efficiencies within your organization and determine whether or not your workflow is actually, your inputs and outputs are you're accomplishing what you say you're accomplishing, but also look at how efficiently you are doing that. And that can determine whether or not your organization, if it is efficient and then it changes to becoming inefficient in areas that it had previously been efficient in, that's going to change the way that you're going to look at workflow. So you're going to address that by identifying where within this workflow are the inefficiencies and why have those become inefficient and how can I adapt those. Now, to kind of tie everything together and to help you understand what this looks like in the real world, in adapting to rapid changes in the environment at a large-scale public organization, we're going to look at the unemployment systems during 2020 when the pandemic first started to shut down businesses and shut down the economy in the US, and the failure of organizations to adapt their technology to properly process all of this new unemployment claims. So if you could watch the video that is embedded, and then you can also look at the article that is attached within the learning module. And I'd like you to, in your discussion post, to identify what the environmental changes were, and if you can take out as many of those environmental conditions and identify how the unemployment agencies failed to address or to respond to changes in those conditions. And we'll get back after that.